Anthropic's powerful Fable model had just come out, and hype was at an all-time high. This model was supposedly so powerful that the US government had even banned it, blocking it from use after a certain date. But before the lights went out, some users pushed too hard. This tweet ended up going viral with 4.7 million impressions, because Rob stayed up all night pushing his limits too hard, thinking that Fable would be removed, trying to burn through all of his tokens before the model went offline. Now, some of the replies for this were really positive and supportive, but mostly people were confused. Like, how could you end up going to the hospital from this? I suspected that these types of things weren't isolated to just Rob, so I spoke with mental health and industry experts and polled nearly 1,300 developers from across the world to see how AI prompt coding was affecting their mental health. And let me tell you, the results are really important. I'm Scott Tolinsky, and welcome to Syntax. So just a few weeks earlier, I'd seen a different post from Adam Elmore. I'm going through the craziest burnout I've experienced in my 17-year career. I've been sick for 16 days now. I haven't even been able to go for walks. Adam has been writing software for nearly 2 decades. He works on open code at Anomaly, so he knows a thing or two about AI. And he recently hit a major burnout. And this was something that took him completely out entirely. So I got on a call with him to see exactly what happened.
Yeah, so when I approached burnout, it was like preceded by very intense AI usage. So I think I burned myself out through just late nights, couldn't hardly sleep. I was so excited to just get the next prompt. Like I didn't want the AI ever stalling if it wasn't burning tokens, and I felt like I was leaving something on the table. So it really sort of, I think December, January for me last year, it kind of reached a crescendo where I was spending so much of my brain power and my thoughts during the day on prompting and getting, stuff felt very productive, getting stuff going and having multiple things going at once and refactors and all this stuff. That sort of led to a pretty hard crash in, I think, February, March, maybe.
Adam's always been a guy who's been excited to get up and go to work. The guy gets up really early in the morning and by all accounts is excited to program, excited to make things. And in this new world, it seemed like things were just getting a bit too heavy.
So the thing I noticed with the burnout was I wasn't excited to wake up anymore. I was sleeping till 7 a.m. I was kind of hesitant to even go into my office. It just kind of felt like soul sucking, and I didn't want to be at my computer, which was a first for me, in 15, 17 years or whatever I've been doing this. So that was the big sign to me. Like if I'm not excited to wake up and work, I know something's off.
Adam's story is just one person's story. It's something that I'd seen both reflected across the industry and in my own experiences. So I was feeling a bit out of my depth with some of this stuff, so I sat down with my wife, Dr. Courtney Tolinsky, licensed psychologist and co-host of the Phases podcast, to pick the brain of somebody who actually knows what they're talking about.
So things or symptoms that you might see are lack of sleep. You might see loss of interest in things that you like to do. You might see just extreme exhaustion. You might see anxiety symptoms. Maybe things like social withdrawal, so a lot of these things kind of build upon each other. So over time, it can get to the point where you're just extremely and chronically fatigued. You are not taking care of yourself. You're having physical anxiety symptoms that are really significant. So if you don't monitor those symptoms and address it right away, then it can escalate to that point where you may need treatment. We call it somatization in the field, meaning that your anxiety is causing, or it's kind of like a loop, a feedback loop, but of physical manifestation of symptoms. So it can be things like a headache, it can be muscle tightness, it can be loss of sleep, right? Sleep deprivation, can be stomach aches or chronic stomach issues, but absolutely anxiety can manifest as physical symptoms.
I wanted to know if these were outliers, so I asked. So I put this survey out and I got nearly 1,300 responses in a week. People clearly wanted to talk about this, and everything you're going to see in this video reflects the people who submitted this survey, not the entire developer population as a whole. It's a reflection of the people who answered this survey. By the way, this survey is still open, so if you want to go take this survey, I'll make sure I link it down below. You can still take this survey. We're still collecting data and updating this accordingly. So the first question I wanted to look at is, why is prompting so hard to put down? I think we've all felt like the pull of this. So we asked developers, how often do you find yourself continuing to prompt just one more prompt past what you meant to stop? As in, how often do you feel pulled to continue to prompt after your intended stopping time? We also asked them, how has your sleep changed since you started using AI heavily for coding? Are you having later bedtimes, racing thoughts, or even problems waking up? 46% of them said they regularly blow past the point in which they were meant to stop. Not once in a while, often, or even every single day. And I personally have felt this same pull. So I took that group of people and looked at their sleep. Of the people who kept going past their stopping point, 58% said their sleep had changed since they started using AI heavily, moderately, or more. Of the people who actually stopped when they meant to, just 17%. And that's the strongest relationship in this entire survey, by the way. And it doesn't mean that like AI prompting inherently wrecked their sleep. It could easily, run the other way or be something else entirely. But they did show up together in the data.
As you can imagine, it's a variable reward system, which is more like a slot machine, right? Where sometimes you're getting a reward, but most of the time you're not. Right. And there's this like anticipation buildup that keeps you motivated to continue to press that lever. And that's really what AI is doing, because there's this chance that it's going to give you a really perfect solution for what it is that you're looking for. But most of the time, it's not going to be perfect. And so there's this concept of, well, let me just do it one more time. Let me just do it one more time. And that keeps you hooked because your motivation is to get that perfect solution. And that in turn induces dopamine, which feeds this addictive cycle.
I also really wanted to know that if AI saves us time in coding, is there more pressure than there was before? And if so, why? If we get time back from being able to produce so much, where does that time go? According to the 2026 AI Index report, developers using GitHub Copilot actually completed 26% more pull requests than without. So we asked developers, how often do you feel you should be producing more AI because it makes it possible, even when you don't want to? 65% said they feel more pressure to produce more often or daily. 2 out of every 3. So while the AI tools clearly work, right? The people using them feel like they should be producing more regularly. Mark Erickson maintains Redux, and he's been programming for over 20 years, maintaining some core projects and writing a ton about how this stuff actually works. He's actually been sharing his thoughts and experiences on his transition over to AI in his blog.
If it is possible to go faster, we must go faster. Why are we going faster in the first place? Something, delivering value to shareholders, capitalism. And so that is kind of what leads to the, well, wait, if I can have one conversation, I can have 2 and bounce back and forth when there's a pause. If I can have 2, I can have 4. If I can have 4, I can have infinity agents running in the background overnight, automatically prompting themselves and picking stuff up. And I totally understand where that train of thought goes. But it brings up the questions of, why are we trying to go this fast in the first place? How much useful output are we getting? Is the quality of good enough? And what does it do to our brains in the process?
I also sat down with Miranda Heath, who's a social scientist and psychology researcher who studies burnout in software development, and more recently, people using AI agents.
So instead of spending more time coding, you're spending more time reviewing things, making decisions, you're taking on more responsibility. And also people are reporting experiencing a lot of pressure to do more quicker just because AI makes this possible. And maybe you have managers who don't really understand your work in practice, but they think AI is a magic bullet and they expect your capacity to be greater and for you to be able to ship more just because now we're using AI tools.
And that like saved effort, as many of us have experienced, doesn't really like come back as saved time or rest or anything like that. It often comes back as like more decisions, more supervision, and higher baseline, right? Like it feels like we're having to answer thousands of questions a day at rapid fire. We often hear that like if the code works, then nothing else matters. Like, do you even need to read the code if it works, right? But what does it mean to feel like a programmer? Like what happens to enjoyment and skill and that identity that you can have for being a developer? We asked developers, do you feel like your actual coding skills are sharpening, holding steady, or diminishing? 59% put their own skills on the diminishing side of things, as well as how much genuine enjoyment or flow do you get from coding now compared to before you started using AI heavily. 54% said they get less enjoyment out of coding than they used to. And those two things aren't separate findings, by the way. In the data, it's mostly the same people. The ones who felt like their skills were slipping were the ones enjoying it the least. And to be clear about, this wasn't like an assessment of their skills. This is just like what they believe about their own skills, right?
I am a programmer, and a lot of what I was struggling with last year was I felt that AI was ripping that identity away from me. And so now my workflow is essentially a conversation back and forth with a very, very smart junior dev. I lay out, like, I very intentionally tried to pick something where I am still driving the work. I know what I want to accomplish. I have a pretty good idea how I want to do it. Let's start a subtask, flesh out my ideas. You go read a bunch of files and research, and I'll point you to some other docs. Let's generate some architecture docs, some research docs. Let's go through the plan. I'll look at it, and once I'm very sure that both of us are on the same page about what I want to do, now you go edit the files. And I actually still review most of the code myself. And so I'm very intentionally choosing a workflow that I know is not as fast as a lot of people are doing.
There's a paper that came out this year that puts it simply as I've seen. AI gives you a result, but a result isn't an answer yet. It becomes one when a person evaluates it and takes responsibility for it. So you can go straight from the output to shipping it, right? Or you can route that through the part where you're a person being accountable for what it actually did.
So it's really important to be an active engager with AI, to think critically, to challenge it, to present it with your ideas, and then see if there are refinements, but to not let it do all of the work. There's a concept called neuroplasticity, right? Where essentially your brain is an efficient machine. And so if you're not using a skill, you will lose that ability over time to maintain that skill. And you can think about like an instrument that you learned in middle school and you haven't picked it up in 15 years.
Yeah.
Right? You may remember some of the basics, but a lot of the like more advanced skills that maybe you had attained are not there anymore. So over time, you do lose those skills.
And the question isn't really like, was every keystroke manual? Did I type in my computer every little thing? It's like, which parts of programming keep up the understanding, agency, and satisfaction alive in your work? And many experienced prompters know that the work gets better like when you know exactly what you're asking for and ask for it. So I also really wanted to know like what separates energizing AI coding use from one that's diminishing of your spirit or energy or any of that stuff. Aaron Francis is the VP of Marketing and Community at Laravel, and he's a developer and product builder. He's been building things for a very long time. He reached out to tell me he doesn't get any negative mental health side effects from AI coding, which is exactly why I wanted to talk to him.
I definitely went through the psychosis phase for sure. And what that looked like for me was just almost like infinite possibility. And that part's a little bit scary because you're like, I could literally do anything. November, December, January, I was ripping tokens till midnight or 2, and I got a wife and 4 kids at home. And so I'm like putting the kids down and I'm like, oh babe, I'm gonna go talk to my computer. So that has definitely happened to me. I didn't burn out on that at all. I just started to realize this is less of a gold rush than I originally thought, because every other developer's doing the exact same thing. And so I thought, instead of, oh, I'm going to build 40 products because now I have this godlike power, I thought, whoa, so does everybody else, and nobody's buying anything anymore because they're all just building it. So like, let me scope it down to 1 or 2 things and increase my vertical ambition on those 1 or 2 things. Because if I'm just ripping out to-do lists or, Screen Studio ripoffs, like, so is everybody else. And so I've had to change the shape of my ambition a little bit from being broad to being deep, because I do have a moat in that area. And now I don't feel like the crazy excitement of there's gold out west. I feel like, I'm like curating my specific thing that has this big moat. And so I can just go to bed because I'm not going to see it launch on Twitter tomorrow.
So let's take a look at how many agents people are running at once. So the majority of people are running 1 to 2 agents. It's like 2 in 3 respondents were running just 1 or 2. With the next highest being 3 agents and less than 200 people running 4 or more agents. Now, if we compare those same numbers for people running multiple agents versus both their enjoyment of coding as well as their sleep, we can see something super interesting. As the amount of agents goes up, so does enjoyment, but also so does moderate or greater sleep disturbance. And if we compare that to people who are feeling like their skills are diminished, you'll actually see that people running more agents indicated the feelings of less skill diminishing as they use these agents, which is super interesting because either these people are not losing their skills because they're more involved, or perhaps they've lost the most and just can't even tell. But honestly, we have no idea of knowing why that is, and the data on this side of the chart for 4 or 5 agents is pretty thin, so we could use quite a bit more respondents before drawing any conclusions from this.
Yeah, I think it interacts with people probably get different things out of development work, and I think depending on the thing you get out of it, AI coding might make your job much harder and more burnout inducing, or easier. And I think if you're someone who enjoys maybe the intellectual challenge, the thinky parts, rather than the produce something parts, it might really change the nature of work for you in a way that makes you lose your love for it.
So what should we change, and how do we keep up our coding capabilities without making guaranteed burnout the default? After talking with Dr. T, I was struck by how many of her suggestions were things that Aaron was already doing in his everyday life.
So another tip I would have would be to set time limits. So if you're in that situation where, it's almost quite there, but you haven't gotten that perfect solution, then maybe you set like a 10, 15 minute limit. And you say, okay, I'm going to continue this for 10 minutes, 15 minutes. If it doesn't give me the solution, then I need to stop and move on, right? Yeah. So you don't get caught in that variable reward system that's so addicting.
I have my office lights shut off at 5 o'clock. So that way, when it hits the end of the workday, I need to leave my office because the lights are off. I'm not going to sit there in the dark.
Right, yeah. Other things I think that are really helpful, which, are obvious, but people, I think, don't often put as much weight into, are just general self-care principles, right? Like, go for a walk, maybe do some mindfulness or deep breathing, relaxation, exercise, right? Do things outside of technology that bring you back to nature and connect you to yourself. I think that's so important. And then last is to talk to your community, talk to people. Don't just talk to AI. If you need to, talk to a therapist so that they can help you create these healthy boundaries and systems. But it's so important to have that human connection. As humans, that's what we need to feel connected and to have that sense of joy.
Saturday, Sunday, I'm just dad. If the kids are asleep, I'm allowed, and this is my rule, not my wife's, I'm allowed to open my laptop if the kids are asleep. If the kids are awake and it's the weekend, I'm dad. Like, I gotta be there. I don't want to miss my kid's childhood because I ripped some extra tokens on something that didn't end up mattering. So that's Saturday, Sunday. Every Sunday morning we go to church. Every Tuesday night, either my wife or I goes to like our small group Bible study. So I'm always seeing either my family or having regular rhythms. I have a like once a month guys lunch where I see friends. I have these things built in to where I'm not able, even if I'm tempted, I'm not able to constantly be prompting. I've also kept all prompt abilities off my phone, which I think is probably important.
I spend a lot of time. I've developed a habit, a lot of time outside. I've started walking. There's like a nature center 20 minutes from my house, and I at least once or twice a week I go there in the mornings and just it's like an hour walk through the woods. That helped me a ton. Just being with my family, being with my kids. I've got two boys. Yeah, just a lot of offline time. I spent a lot less time on Twitter and just everywhere else that I was spending my time online.
Also, one thing to consider here is that Aaron works for himself, right? Like, nobody is saying you must ship this many lines of code, right? He's not having quotas to deploy, and he's not having managers breathe down his neck. Some of these boundaries are available to him because he's able to set his own work schedule and he's able to set his own work boundaries. Everything I've mentioned so far, like, set a limit, put your phone in the other room, shut your computer, stop work at the correct time, right? All of these things are like built on the assumption that you're able to do that without getting fired, or that you feel safe and comfortable in your workflow. And check this out. This is the employment for software developers aged 22 to 25. According to the 2026 AI Index report, it's down close to 20% from its peak in 2022. Every age group over 30, and that same data kept growing. If you narrow it down to the jobs most exposed to AI, and in that group is down to about 16% relative to the least exposed. And I will say that this report is careful about this, so I'm going to make it clear, to you as well, that unemployment went up across every kind of job in that window, and it actually went up more for the jobs least exposed to AI instead of the most. So this isn't proof that AI took those jobs, but if you're like 23 and you feel like the ladder's possibly being pulled up behind you, you're going to be pushing hard, right? You're probably going to be pushing past your set boundaries and limits that other people who have those abilities might be in more control of. So healthy prompting, it can't be carried by personal discipline alone, right? The worker, the workplace, all of these things matter, in which like stopping working on time is even possible. I mean, even pre-AI, there's been jobs where I've had to work major overtime to ship, and I've been pushed well beyond past the limit in which I wanted to continue working, and it did affect me negatively in my mental health. So this is obviously nothing new with AI, but the data definitely shows that people feel like they need to produce more now than ever. And among the people who answered this survey, AI was changing more than how fast software gets made. It was changing the pressure, sleep, enjoyment, and how capable people felt. But at the end of the day, Adam came back, and Aaron built in limits to his workflow, and Mark found a way to stay the one making the decisions and in control of his code. So individual limits, they only really come into play if the systems around you allow you to even stop working in the first place. So before maximum output 24/7 all the time becomes the baseline for you, we need to figure out what healthy AI-assisted workflows actually look like in our lives. So the survey is still open, by the way. If you'd like to take it, head on over to the website. We'll have linked up here. You can still certainly take that survey. We're still going to be capturing and calculating data based on it. The more people we have, the better. And we also got hundreds of messages in the other responses section of that survey. So I'd love to take some more time to compile that information, understanding people's feelings and other things that they're experiencing across their day-to-day workflow. And I'd also love to hear from you. What things are working for you in your health journey here? Are you able to maintain healthy stress levels and work-life balance with AI agents, or is it affecting you negatively? Let me know down below what's working for you and what's not.